Good day everyone, welcome to ITS 208 and CSE 209. This is Graphics and Visual Computing. Today we're going to have our very first pre-recorded class, and this is going to be the start of our Adobe Photoshop lesson. So my apologies if we are not able to do it online. It's because we're currently having some technical issues with internet connectivity. So we're just going to record this, upload it to YouTube. I'll send it to you the link later on so you can watch it anytime this week. But please take note though, it's because later on after this lesson I will be giving you an assessment activity and of course an assignment. So please make sure to take note and then listen attentively. Alright, so for today's topic we're going to talk about Adobe Photoshop getting started. If you have any clarifications or questions, please share it on our Facebook chat group. So my name is Juleus Publico, your instructor. Let's get started. Lesson 1. Adobe Photoshop getting started. So what exactly is Adobe Photoshop? Adobe Photoshop is a software application for image editing and photo retouching for use on Windows or Mac OS computers. Widely used as one of the most powerful image editors in the market, Adobe Photoshop is equipped with advanced features that can cater to a wide range of artistic professionals and hobbyists. So it is widely used because Adobe Photoshop is the leading standard application for photo editing. So if you're going to ask any designer out there, wherever in the world, what is the application that you're using, most designers will say Adobe Photoshop. Okay, so Adobe Photoshop is intended for imaging and design application. It is a benchmark in the world of professional digital image solution. It's a powerful photo and image editing application. And Adobe Photoshop is not a drawing program. Okay, before we begin with using Adobe Photoshop, we will have to set up our expectation on how we are going to use it. First of all, Adobe Photoshop is not intended to be a drawing program. Although that's not entirely true. It's because me, when I started getting into graphic designing, I use Adobe Photoshop for everything, for digital drawing, digital painting, designing, creating logos, etc. I use Photoshop. Well, it's well and good, it's working. However, that's not the proper proper practice. That's not a good practice. Okay, the real power of Photoshop is in working with existing images. Typical tasks include treating and manipulation, compositing, converting to different formats, printing, etc. Alright, so the main purpose of Adobe Photoshop is treating a photo, manipulating a photo, perhaps creating a composition, and converting to different formats. Alright, so basically Adobe Photoshop is mostly for photo editing. So if you have an existing image, you want to enhance it, you want to add more to it, perhaps you want to add anything to your photo which is already existing, then you can use Adobe Photoshop. Alright, so how are we going to install Adobe Photoshop? So last meeting I've sent you the link of Adobe Photoshop where you can download for free, and in reality Adobe Photoshop is not free. Okay, you'll have to pay for it, if I'm not mistaken, yearly. But anyway, don't worry, we don't have to do that. Using the link that I provided to you, you will be able to install Adobe Photoshop for free. Okay, so I'm expecting for those who for those who have computers at home, may it be laptop or PC desktop computers, I'm expecting you've already installed Adobe Photoshop, and that was Adobe Photoshop 2021. If you'll be using the link that I sent you, it's Adobe Photoshop CC 2021, and this system requirement, and for the rest of this presentation, the examples will be using Adobe Photoshop CC 2019. There are a little difference to it, but most of the things are similar. So just don't be confused. So for Adobe Photoshop CC 2019, here is the minimum system requirements for optimal designing experience. First is you should have at least 2 GB or more of random access memory, RAM. And then you should have at least 2.6 GB of or more disk space for installation. That is if you be using 32-bit operating system. 3.1 gigabyte or more for 64-bit operating system. And then you should have at least Intel Core 2 or AMD Athlon 64 processor, and then 2 gigahertz clock speed or higher. And then as for graphics, you should have at least 1024 by 768 or HD with 16-bit color, 512 megabytes or more dedicated video RAM. So the specification is minimal. It's not too complicated, and it's not too dili kayo siya taas ang specification. So any modern computer should be able to handle Adobe Photoshop CC 2019. Alright, so every time that we'll be doing a graphic design using Adobe Photoshop, the very first step that we're going to work through is to set it up. Basically, setting up the document. Okay, setting up your document correctly from the start will make your job much easier as you work through your project. This will require some advanced planning. For example, if your final output will be a brochure, you have to set the exact paper size and set up your document to be horizontal or double-sided. So I guess this is very important, especially if you'll be working a project. For the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to understand what the project is going to be, or what would be the platform where the project is going to be released. So for example, if it's going to be uploaded to the internet, so if you're going to create a design and then to be uploaded to the internet, you have to determine what would be the size. Let's say you'll be creating a design for a Facebook cover photo. Alright, so first if you're going to Google what is the size for Facebook cover photo, something like that. And then, or if you're going to create a design for billboards, then of course or perhaps a poster or tarpaulins, then you have to know what is the size of the tarpaulin or the billboard or poster. Alright, and that way you won't have any problems with designing your project. So the first thing that you're going to do is properly set up the documents. In Adobe Photoshop, to create a document, click File and then New. This will open the document dialog box. Alright, so let me open up Adobe Photoshop. So again, in this example, you'll see basically it is for Adobe Photoshop CC 2019, but what am I going to use here is version 2021. So there might be a little difference, but they're almost the same. So let me open up Adobe Photoshop now. Here it is. Okay, so again, this is Adobe Photoshop CC 2021, and these are the recent projects that I've created. So although in 2019 you have to select File, New, in 2021 actually that's the same thing, File and then New, right? Or on the home page you'll see Create New right here. So just click on that, and then this is the new document dialog box. So on the left side you will see some presets, let's say web large, custom, then letter, and then you can also select on the tab above for photos. So we have landscape, portrait, something like that. We also have for print. So these are some presets. So just in case you're not too sure what is the size for an A4 bond paper, so we have A4 right here. This one for tabloid, you just have to select it. But if you're already sure about the size and it's not displayed here, so you can just create it yourself. So how are we going to do that? Let's select custom, this one, and then on the right side you will see the preset details. So the first line you will see the file name. Okay, here you will be able to manage your file properties. You can name your file, set up the page size and orientation, and other options. Page size and orientation. Page size represents the final size of the file. Type the exact values for height and width to give you control over the page size and orientation. You can choose the value unit from pixels, inches, centimeters, and more. Right, let's go back. Let's go to Adobe Photoshop. So here it is. So notice that you'll have width and height, and then on the right side you'll see the option for its unit. Right now it is selected to inches, but if we're going to click the drop down, you'll see other options like pixels, centimeters, millimeters, points, and so on. Alright, so for example, we're going to create a project that will be printed for a long bond paper. So first is, if you don't know what is the size of a long bond paper, you have to Google it, but it would be 8.5 by 13. Okay, so again, you have to make sure what is the exact size of the paper that you'll be printing it on, to make sure that you won't have any problems on designing it later on when you print it, when you decide to print it. And then on the right side, you will see orientation like portrait or landscape, and on the right side as well, you will see a checkbox that says artboard. So this is an additional feature for Adobe Photoshop 2021. So what I usually do is I click it. Later on we'll see what that is for, but this will just give me an easy way. Basically it will just give me an easier access to if I decided to change the canvas size or the paper size. So I'm just leave it check. And then here, the resolution. Resolution is the number of pixels on a printed area of an image. The more pixels there are on the page, the higher the resolution, therefore better quality. The standard recommended for printed images is 150 to 300 pixels per inch, and for web images is 72 ppi. So again, the resolution will determine how much density, or basically it will define the density of your picture. So the more pixel per inch, the more resolution, then the better the quality of the image. Alright, but the standard recommended for printed images is 150 to 300. So if you're going to design for printing or something like that, for let's say for bond paper or tarpaulins, you must select 150 to 300 pixel per inch. Then for web images is 72. So if you're just going to create a graphic design to be uploaded to the internet, try to keep it with 72 ppi or pixel per inch. So in this case, we're just going to select 150 pixel per inch, but the default one usually is 72 if you're going to print it. So I guess we'll stick it to 72. And then on the color mode, choose a color mode that will fit your project. RGB color is for web contents and CMYK is for prints. Alright, so this will matter depending on which platform are you going your design is intended for. So if you're going to create one to be uploaded on the internet, make sure to select RGB. But if you're going to let me set it back again. Width is 8.5, height is 13. Alright, and if you're going to use your graphic design to be printed, then you have to select CMYK. Alright, so in my case, we're just going to select RGB, and just don't mind the other option. We don't necessarily have to use those. The only thing that you're going to make sure is you'll be using either RGB if you're going to upload it on the internet, or basically use it only for computers. But if you're going to print it for tarpaulins or let's say bond papers, you have to select CMYK. And then make sure to select let's say 16-bit na lang. My graphics is capable of 32-bit, but for other computers the default ones would be 16. That is the maximum, so I'm just going to select 16. Alright, and then the background contents, let me set it to white so that it will give me a default white background. And then for the color profile, just select whatever it is that is. Just select whatever the default one. Don't necessarily have to worry about those. Now once you've already set up your document, click create. Alright, so this is the canvas or the paper size. Let's just call it the canvas. And here are the things that you will see inside Adobe Photoshop. Now let's examine what are these icons what is their purpose, and how are we going to use it. When do we use it? When we are designing a graphic design. So next is, let's talk about next, once we've already created our document, once we've already set it up, then for next thing is, the next thing that we have to learn is how are we going to open an image. So for example, if you decided to design an image or let's enhance an image, how are we going to do that? There are several ways to do it. First is you can just select file and then open. Let's say for example, if I'm going to open this file right here, that's it. Now we have the photo is already downloaded in our Adobe Photoshop. We can now start modifying it or manipulating it. And then once you're done, okay, so let's say for example you're already done with your design, then it's time for you to save it. So how are you going to save your Adobe Photoshop or your project? Then select file and then save as, then type the file name and select the file format. If you want to save a file for future editing, select Photoshop project or PSD. To save a file for web print or web content, select JPEG, PNG, GIF, etc. Okay, so the next step is you have to learn, or you have to know what format are you going to save your project into. So if you're just going to save it for, let's say if you wanted to upload it, send it to somebody, then I would suggest to select JPEG or PNG. Okay, so again, how are we going to save it? File, save as. Okay, now if you're not done yet, for example you're not done with your project and you want to edit it someday or in the future, then make sure to select on the drop down here, make sure to select Adobe Photoshop or Photoshop.psd. This is the editable format. That means you can still change it, you can still modify it in the future. But if you want to save it to be uploaded, kana makita na nimo ang yang finished product, make sure to select either JPEG, this one, or PNG here. So these are the only file format that I am using if I'm going to save a Photoshop file or Photoshop project, and then click save. So obviously we're not going to do that today, right now. Later on we'll get to do that later on. Alright, so next is we're going to familiarize the workspace. Those icons, those tools, what are their purpose, how are we going to use it, when do we use it. So lesson 2, familiarizing the workspace. This is the layout of a default workspace of Adobe Photoshop CC, the essentials. So the first thing that you'll see are the menu bar. The menu bar contains all the main functions of Photoshop, such as file, edit, image, layer, select, filter, view, window, and help. So this is the menu bar. So let me open up Adobe Photoshop. Okay, so we have here the menu bar at the top. So I'm not sure if you'll see it, but here we have file, edit, image, layer, type, select, filter, 3D, view, window, and help. So this is what you call menu bar. And basically it will give you multiple menus or options that you can use all throughout your project. We'll get to it as we go along with our project or with our course. Next is the options bar. The options bar contains additional control of the selected tools. The options change as different tools are selected. So here, right below the menu bar are the options bar. So notice that whenever and this is the tools, and it will change whenever I'm going to select any tool. So for example, if I'm going to select this tool, the options bar will also change. If I'm going to select this tool, the option bar will change. So basically it will just give you more control on the tool that you selected. And then the file name or tab, this displays the file name, the magnification percentage, and the color mode set to the project. So this is the tab. Alright, so this basically, a while ago we've created our first project. Here it is. And then since we open up another photo, so we have two tabs now, right? Okay, for some reason I closed it. Let me. Alright, so basically it will give you the file name and then the zoom or the magnification level and then the color mode that you selected. So right now it says Untitled -1 at 16.7 magnification RGB color mode. What else? The canvas, the toolbar. This contains most of the major editing tools for easy access. So this is the toolbar, this one. Later on we are going to check each one of these tools and how are we going to use them. But these are the toolbars. So basically these are the things that you will use to manipulate the photos. So it varies from, let's say, move tool, select or marquee tool, so on and so forth. We also have here the paint bucket tool. So that means if I can use this to change the color of the canvas, just like that. All right. Anyway, we'll get to the tools later on. And then of course the canvas. So this is the canvas, the one that we set up the moment that we started with Adobe Photoshop. So you can change the size of the canvas by selecting it, by setting it up properly on the first place. All right, on the first time. But if you decided to change the canvas, for example, you've set it to long but you decided to just change it to short, you can always change it to just select image at the top and then go to canvas size, and then here you can change the size. So for example, if we're going to set it to short pen paper, instead of 13 we're going to use 11 for the height, and then press OK, click proceed, and then here it is. So instead of long pen paper, it is now short. And then palettes contain functions that help you monitor and modify images. By default, palettes are stacked together in groups. The usually visible palettes are Navigator, Color, Histogram, and Layers. So this is the palette. So we have here the Navigator, we have the colors, the color option, histogram. I think the histogram, it's not displayed in here, and then of course layers. We'll get to it one by one later on. So basically here it is. We have the colors, and then we can add Navigator. I'm just going to select that, but we'll get to it later on. But basically the palette that contains additional control. So if the option will give you additional option of the tools, the palettes will give you additional control on the actual project. Alright, okay, next let's talk about the palettes. So we all know that this part right here are the palettes. Next is we're going to understand what exactly is a palette. So palettes contain functions that will help you monitor and modify images. By default, palettes are stacked together in groups. The usually visible palettes are Navigator, Color, Histogram, and Layers. You can add more palettes by going to Windows in the menu bar. Okay, so we all know that this is the palettes, right? However, this is not the only palettes you can use in Adobe Photoshop. In fact, if you're going to select Windows, you can add a bunch more. So we have 3D, actions, adjustments, brush settings, and we'll get to them later on. So basically, there are no final look on the workspace of Adobe Photoshop because you can always customize it yourself. Right now, this is the default one. Later on, once I'll be doing a design on myself, there will be some palettes that I'm going to include and remove. Again, the workspace of Adobe Photoshop is fully customizable. So for example, for brushes, we also have a Navigator, Style, Swatches, Timeline, so on. There are tons of palettes you can add. Basically, this will give you functions in modifying and controlling how your design is going to look like. Okay, so first one is the Navigator. Let's just talk let's talk about some of the palettes that we will most likely to use during our course. So the first one is the Navigator. So to open up Navigator, basically Navigator will allow you to resize and move around within the project. To navigate, move around the red navigation box, drag the slider, click on zoom in and zoom out, or specify the magnification percentage. So imagine if this is this is the Navigator, so all you need to do is just move this red box around to to move the canvas, especially if you're zooming in. And then here you can slide. If you're going to zoom in or zoom out, you can use this slider right here. So let's open up Adobe Photoshop. Let me open this one. So for example, and then right now the Navigator is not yet displayed, so we're going to display it by clicking Windows and then Navigator. Here it is. So right now let's increase the size of this Navigator a little more. Let me add it at the top. Okay, so this is the Navigator. Let me increase the size for okay. So the Navigator is mostly useful if we're going to zoom in and zoom out with our image. So for example, we're going to zoom in. Okay, so for us to be able to easily navigate, for example, what if we're going to move outside on the outer side of this image, then we can just move this red box, move it around just like that. Okay, we can also use the slider to zoom out and zoom in. Just move it to the right side to zoom in, move it to the left side to zoom out. Alright, so this is just another way of zooming in and out. This is not the only way to move around the canvas or zoom in and zoom out. We'll talk more about it, how to do that in the different ways later on, but this is one way of doing it. Next is color, swatches, and style. Right? The color palette displays the current foreground and background colors and RGB values for these colors. Use the sliders to change the colors or choose a color from a spectrum of colors displayed in the color ramp at the bottom of the palette. That's a lot of colors. But anyway, when we say color palette, here it is. So at the bottom you'll see color, swatches, gradients, and patterns. So this will just give you controls on which color are you going to use. So here you will see different spectrum of colors. So we have here the foreground and the background. So basically the foreground that's your main color, and then the background is, well, your secondary color. So basically it's the same thing that you will see here, this one. So for example, I'd like to change my I am going to paint some kind of text in here using the brush tool, which is this, and I'm going to brush it with, let's say, color blue. Then all you need to do is select the slider, move it to the blue area, wherever you want, this one, and then you can drag this circle around to select the shade of that color. So if you wanted to select this shade of color, take note of this is your color that you're selecting. So if you want a royal blue color, then I'm going to move it here, and then I can start painting whatever it is inside my project. Alright, so that is your primary color. Okay, next we have swatches. Swatches palette allows you to choose a preset foreground or background color saved in the library. You can also add a customized color to the library. So the swatches just contain some of the preset color. So it's a little bit hard for us to constantly move this. It's always a struggle if we're going to constantly move this slider all around just select the perfect color. You can save them. You can save a color by selecting the swatch, and then you can select the folders, the default colors that we have here. For example, we have RGB. These are the basic colors for RGB. For CMYK, for grayscale, pastel. So you just have to select something like that. So basically that is what palette is for. It will just give you more, it will just allow you to use preset colors. Then gradients. So gradients are just collections of, I'm not sure if I included that here, but it's okay. Gradients are just collection of colors saved, which is combination of multiple colors. So for example, this one, if you're going to let's say, basically it will give us a combination, we say gradient of multiple colors. For example, that one. So you'll notice that there are two colors, red and green. Same thing if we're going to select this. Alright, we'll talk more about how we're going to use it in the future. And then next we have styles. The styles palette allows you to view, select, and apply preset layer styles. By default, a preset style replaces the current layer style. You can use the styles in the palette or add your own using the create new style icon. More about layers and layer styles will be discussed later in this course. Alright, so in the styles is not here, so obviously we just have to select Windows and then styles here. So these are some of the styles that you can use, but again we're going to talk more about it in our future lesson, especially if we're going to discuss about style. So let's just proceed. History palette. The history palette allows you to store and display each action performed, allowing you to jump to any recent stage of the image alteration. Each action made into the project will be stored to the history palette. It is important to note that once you click on any of the previous stage, all the changes that were made after will be lost. So this is one of the most important palette in Adobe Photoshop, is the history palette. So let's open it up. So window and then history. Again, window and then history here. So basically every time anything that you're going to do inside the project will reflect here. So let's keep it open and let's, for example, we will try to paint just like that. Notice that the history will also change. It will keep on adding. So whatever it is, all the activities that we are doing, it will be added here. So for example, since we are trying to brush, then it will add brush tool here. And then let's use another tool. So for example, we'll use smudge. Alright, so the smudge tool will also reflect here. So every activity will reflect inside the history. Now, kanus ano siya importante, especially if you're taas na kaayo imong nabuhat and then you decide nga you don't want to do that anymore, and the Control Z is no longer working because there are limit on how many times we can use Control Z. So instead, we just have to go to history and select the activity that you want to move back or to jump back. For example, if I want to remove everything and Control Z is no longer, I've already used up all the Control Z or undo function, then I just have to select this. So it will reset to the point. It will jump to the activity where we on that particular activity where you selected. Okay, so this is one of the most important palette when designing, especially if you will be designing and there will be lots of activities that you've already made to your project. Obviously we have to set it back to original. And then layer. Okay, layers is this perhaps is one of the most important. If history is important, layers is much more important. Layers let you organize your work into distinct levels that can be edited and viewed individually. Creating multiple layers lets you easily control how your artwork is printed, displayed, and edited. More details on layers will be discussed in the Understanding Layers lesson. So we're going to discuss it in our future lesson, the layers, because that is a broad discussion. But basically layers will just give you control on how the elements will be arranged on your project. So here, this is the layer palette. Let me move it to the top. Here you'll see the layers, and notice there are only one layer. Basically we can add multiple, and that's the thing about designing. The every activity or every element that we're going to add to our design, it must be saved on a separate layer, right? And then by moving the layers around, you'll be able to arrange the elements. So for example, we'll add another object here. So let's say we're going to place another photo, let's say this. Now, since we added another photo to our project, notice that you will see two layers. A while ago we only have one, but this time we have two. So I'm not sure if you'll see that. I guess my face is on the way. Let me move it to the right the left side, here. So there are 2 layers now instead of 1, since we added another element. We can add more layers to it. We will try to add another picture. So select file and then place embedded. Let's select another photo, let's say this one. Alright, we have 3 pictures now. That means we will have 3 layers, as you have noticed. Now, the layers is very important. It's because it will allow us to arrange our objects individually. So for example, I want the photo of this face photo to be in the front. So if I wanted to set right now the picture or this face, okay, the photo that has a face on it is right below at the back of this photo. So how am I going to move it to the front? Then I just have to select the layer and move it at the top. Move it to the top, right? So this time around, the face photo is now at the top of everything else. So what if I wanted to move it, or what if I wanted this photo to be at the front? Then same thing, I'm just going to click that and move it to the top. So basically, the arrangement of the layers on how it appears on your canvas, basically it will basically how we are going to arrange the layers on the layer palette will also affect on how we are going to how it will appear on your canvas. So kinsa tong nas ibabaw sa layer, maibabaw pod siya diri sa canvas. So that is the general idea on layers, and we'll learn more of it in our future lesson. Alright, next is knowing the tools. The tools provide multiple image editing functions in Adobe Photoshop. Upon loading Photoshop, the sidebar with a variety of tools usually appear on the left side of the screen, called the toolbox. Just like this one. Usually it's on the left side, left side. These tools typically fall under categories of selection and measuring, retouching and painting, drawing and typing, navigation, and color boxes and modes. Note that some of the tools contain small triangle in the bottom right of the toolbox icon. This can be expanded to reveal similar tools. Alright, so the toolbars are like the pencil, or if we're going to draw something on a paper, then that is our pencil, that is our crayon, that is our pastel. So basically the tools that we'll be using for our design. So let's get back to our Adobe Photoshop. Here is our toolbar. These are the tools that we will be using to manipulate our photos here. And notice that there are some of the tools have a small triangle at the bottom right corner. That means if we're going to click and hold it, or right click, it will give a similar tool. Same thing here. If we're going to right click on it, it will give us another tool. So actually most of the tools have similar or additional tools basically. So for example, the brush tool, if we're going to right click on it, there will be brush tool, pencil tool, color replacement, so on and so forth. Alright, so let's check the tools one by one and let's understand its purpose. First is the Marquee Tool, this button right here. It selects an object by drawing a rectangle or an ellipse around it. Click the tool button, choose a rectangular or an elliptical marquee, and drag the marquee over the area of the area you wish to select. So basically, the Marquee Tool is for selecting. So let's open up Adobe Photoshop. Let me erase the other photos. Okay. So for example, we want to select some parts of this vehicle. Let me unlock it first. Okay. We will use this. If we're going to hover, it will say rectangular marquee tool. So it will, by default, it will give us a rectangular selection tool. So click on that, and then if we're going to click and drag it anywhere on our canvas or in our project, okay, it will allow us to select it just like this. So right now, once you selected it, you will see a moving let's say ants, or moving lines. So that means this area right here inside this box is being selected. So you can do whatever it is that you want. You can either move it and so on and so forth. And notice that the only thing that is moving is the one that is inside the selection. Alright, then Control D to remove the selection. Control D or right click and then deselect. Next is the Move tool. It is used to select and move objects on the page. Click the tool button, then click on any image on the page you wish to move. Alright, so the Move tool is this. So for 2019, this is the icon, but for 2021, this is how it looked like. This. So basically, it will just allow us to move everything that we've selected. So for example, right now, since we haven't selected anything, we are able to move the entire photograph around. But using select tool, so for example, we just want to move this area right here, then we will use the Move tool to move it around. So the Marquee tool is for selecting areas. The moving tool is for moving the selected area. Then Control Z to undo your action. Next is we have Lasso tool. Selects an object by drawing a freehand border around it. Click the tool button, drag to draw a freehand border around the area of the image you wish to select. So the Lasso tool, this one right here, will just allow you to select freehand. So a while ago, this Marquee tool will allow you to select using rectangular selection. The Lasso tool, the one at the bottom, it will allow you to select areas freely. So you just have to click that and then draw it around your subject. For example, this, if I decided to select this area, that's it. Alright, so we are now able to select, instead of using rectangular selection, we're able to do it freehand. So this is useful when we are trying to select objects just like this car. So if we wanted to separate the car or remove the background, we can use Lasso tool and then we can just move in, zoom in, and then try to select as the edges as careful as we can, something like that. But obviously it will take a lot of time. It will take a lot of practice to really trace the edges of this vehicle. So that's why we have other options which we'll discuss in the future. But the Lasso tool will just allow you to select areas inside your project freely. So for example, we're going to select this area and we can move this area only, just like that. Next is we have polygonal lasso. Select an object by drawing a straight edge border around it. Click the tool button, click on the starting point on the image, drag to draw a straight edge border, click and drag again to select the area of the image you wish to select. Double click to finish. Alright, so basically the Lasso tool, we're going to right click on the Lasso tool, you'll see Polygonal Lasso tool. We're going to select that. Instead of doing freehand, all you need to do is just click, 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 and it will automatically give you straight lines. So all you need to do is just click on clicking it. Click on and click until such time that both of the ends are meeting together, then it will automatically create the selection. So this is useful when we are trying to select areas or objects that have straight edges. Next, Healing Brush tool. Correct small blemishes in scanned photos. Select the tool, hold down the Alt key and left click on the base color you need to heal, then left click over to the blemish. Right, so let's open up a photo and we will try to use the Healing Brush tool. Let's open up a photo, file open, and then this. Okay, so let's try to zoom in. So we'll notice that there are some blemishes in the image. We can select the Healing Brush tool for us to be able to remove these blemishes, and all we need to do is I basically just have to click it, just like that. So it will try to correct some minor blemishes, and then all we need to do is just click it. So notice, all right, let me repeat the process so we can create a before and after. So we'll try to duplicate this layer, so copy and paste the layer, so we have now 2 layers, and then we will start removing the blemishes using this spot healing brush tool or the healing brush tool. Alright, so for the spot healing brush tool, well, obviously the only thing that we're going to do is just click and just click it, just like that. Click the blemishes, and then the computer or the Photoshop will try to analyze the areas and then remove the blemishes. However, there are some cases, so you can increase the brush size by right click and then right click and then move the slider for the size. So if you want a smaller brush, you can move it to the left. If you want a bigger brush, just move it to the right. Alright, so let's try to keep on removing the blemishes. Okay, alright, so let's see the before and after. So this is the after, this is the before, this is the after. Alright, so this is just one way of removing blemishes using spot healing. And for the standard healing brush tool, there is a difference when it comes to how are we going to use it. So just right click and then healing brush tool. This time you have to click Alt. So for example, we want to cover this blemish. First is you're going to select the area where you want it to be covered with. So for example, ganan kong replace ni ganan kong tabunan na, so I'm going to select the area nga limpyo here by clicking Alt. Right now I'm clicking Alt on my keyboard, and then click the area that is clean, and then lift the Alt, remove the Alt, and then click on the area that you want to heal, to remove the blemish. So basically, ang buhatan sa healing brush tool is you're going to take an area and then put it, murabag mag-patch ra ka ba, i-patch nimo, magkuha ka direct area, and then you'll have to patch it on the blemish. So for example, another example is this. We will try to cover this with kaning blemish. Then we'll select the area that is clean here, click Alt, and then paste. Right. However, it may not be very effective in some cases. That's why when we're just trying to patch blemishes on face, then it would best to select spot healing tool, because you just have to click it and you're done. Alright, let's proceed. And then we have brush tool. Draws line of different thickness and colors. Select the tool, then click on the selected area, drag to draw lines. Use the options bar to change the brush mode, opacity, and flow. Alright, so next is we have brush, this one. So basically the brush, from the term suggests, it will give us options to draw anything inside our project. So for example, here we'll click brush, and then to increase the size of the brush, just right click. Same thing, move it to the left if you want a smaller brush, move it to the right if you want a bigger brush. Alright, and then at the bottom it says hardness. Basically it defines the edge of the brush. So if we're going to move it to the right side 100%, it will give us a brush that has hard edges. Okay, notice that the edges of this brush is hard, but if we're going to control Z and then move it to the left, the hardness becomes, let's say, 0%, then it will give us a softer edge. Right? So there are a ton of things you can do with brush. So right click to select the brush preset. So for example, I want this kind of brush, so that one. And then you can add options here for the opacity, the flow, etc. We'll talk more about it in the future as we go along. And then next is we have clone stump. Takes a small takes a sample of an image and applies over another image or a part of the same image. Alright, so let me just show it to you how clone stamp work. So this is a clone stamp, or in keyboard press S. Right, what it does is it will allow us to just duplicate, or let's say stamp or clone any areas of your image. So for example, ganahan ko nga i-duplicate ni kaning mata. So first is I'm going to select the eye. I'm going to press Alt. Okay, I'm going to press Alt and then select the eye, then click, and then release and paste it somewhere. All right, here. So if I'm going to duplicate it again, Alt and then click, same thing, Alt and then click. So it's very trippy, but of course this is not the proper way on how we're going to use clone, but this is how it works. Okay, so that is stamp clone, or clone stamp rather. And then art history brush. Basically, if we're going to use it, it will remove everything that we've done on that area. So for example, here, so since in this example we've removed some of the stone, of the blemishes using the spot healing. So if I'm going to use the art, basically it resets it back. Basically it resets everything back to its original form, just like that. So notice that the blemishes came back. So the art history brush will just reset it back to the original state. Then we have erase tool. Well, obviously it will allow us to erase anything on our page. So for example, we're going to erase, so this is the eraser tool. You can still use right click and then move the size around to get a smaller or bigger brush size, and then just brush it anywhere so you can erase the image or the object. And then we have paint bucket tool. So the paint bucket tool will allow us to fill an entire area with a color. So for example, we will place a color for this. We'll paint it with any other color, so just right click and here, and then you'll see paint bucket tool. We'll fill it with color. Let's say red. Here, just like that. Okay, but this is not the proper way of using it. This is just how to use it. So for example, we're going to select this area and fill it with red, just like that. Okay, so that is paint bucket tool. Next is we have gradient tool. So basically it will allow us to apply multiple colors, combination of colors. So just like that. For example, we've created a selection, and then if we're going to select the gradient tool, here are the options at the top. Obviously we can add more, but let's just use of the default ones. So for example, we'll fill it with this color right here. All you need to do is to click and drag. Again, click and drag, and it will automatically apply to the selection. Control Z, and then let's proceed. We have blur tool. It blurs the sharp edges of an image. So the blur tool will, from the term suggests, it will allow us to blur something on the image. So just right click on this icon right here and then select blur. Same thing, we're going to increase the size and then the hardness, and then basically it will allow us to blur the area by just dragging on it, or by brushing on it, kumbaga. Alright, for example, we'll try to blur this. We just have to drag it around. So I'm not sure if you've noticed it, but right now it's currently, this eye right here is currently blurry. And then we have dodge tool. It lightens areas in an image. So At the bottom, you'll see dodge, burn, and sponge tool. So the dodge tool will allow you to whiten. So for example, if you want to whiten this area right here, we'll increase the size. Alright, just like that. So we've whitened this area. Alright, but you have to use it carefully. It's because it will mess up the entire thing. It will not look good. And then the opposite of that is burn tool. So it will darken the area. This is especially useful if we will try to add highlights and shadows to our image. So for example, if you want to increase the highlight, so we will use the dodge tool. We will increase the highlight here. This is just an example. And then we will add, let's say, shadows on the side. Then we will use the burn tool. Alright. Okay, so this is the after, before, after. Alright, so that is the purpose of the dodge and burn. Next, we have direct selection tool. It works just the same with the selection. And then the type tool. Right, next time is if we're going to add text, then we will select this, the type tool. Select click this the type tool. Click on the area where you want to add the text, and then start adding the text. And then you can change the color by selecting at the options above. So we want to change the color to, let's say, red. Let's say you can change the font by selecting here. And then the size. Alright, that's it. Then we have pen tool. Okay, so this is the one of the most powerful tools for Adobe Photoshop is the pen tool. It draws smooth edge path. Select the tool, click on the image, drag to draw a path. Click and drag the anchor points to modify the path. Okay, so basically the pen tool, we'll learn more about it in the future. This is one of the most powerful tools for Photoshop, but let me just show it to you how it works. So the pen tool will allow you to create this lines, alright, straight lines. Oops, hold on. Or curved lines. Okay, so this is very useful for tracing. So for example, if you want to trace this image, this pen tool is what I usually use. So for example, we will trace it. We'll use pen tool. Alright. Okay, so basically it will allow you to create lines. It could be either straight lines, curvy lines, and we will learn more about pen tool in the future. And then the hand tool allows you to move around within the image. Right, basically the hand tool will just allow you to move it around. Okay, just like that. Or in some cases, or using your keyboard, you just have to press space. Alright, so for example, you're using move tool and you want to move the image around, so just select, just go and just hold, click and hold your the space button, and then it will automatically turn into hand. That's the shortcut. And then magnifying glass tool, basically it will allow you to zoom it in or out. So if you want to zoom it in, just select the magnifying tool, click on the area you want to move to zoom in. If you want to zoom out, click click Alt on your keyboard. Alright, so again, to zoom it in, just click it. But if you want to zoom out, just click and hold Alt on your keyboard and then click. And then the color boxes. So we have here the foreground color and the background color. So it's right here. So right now I'm using red. So this is my foreground. This is my background color. So the foreground will be used for everything else. Let's say if you're going to fill a color, if you're going to brush, this would be the foreground backgrounds. For example, if I'm going to use the brush tool, then since this is on red, and obviously every time I'm going to brush, then it will use red. We can change that by clicking on it, and then this color picker will display. You can move it around if you'd like to. Right, so let's try yellow. Let's try green. Alright, so that will be the tools, and however, there are a lot more of tools that we will encounter, or we will use for Adobe Photoshop, and then we're just going to learn them as we go along. So let's have a few practice activities. First one is we're going to color picking. Alright, so you can choose the exact color as displayed in the picture by picking it. There are two ways in picking a color: using the eyedropper tool or use the color picker using the eyedropper tool. So let's open up Adobe Photoshop. Now, for example, we want to select a certain color so that we can use it for something else. So for example, we want this. Okay, let me look for a different color picture. Let me open a different picture that has more color to it. Okay, this one. So how are we going to make sure that we will get this exact color right here, this DC, right? So we will use the color picker. So the color picker, or the just here it is. The eyedropper tool, it will allow us to take a sample of the color. So for example, right now we're currently on color green, but what if we're going to select this color? So we are going, or take a sample of this color, so we will use color picker and then click on the area where you wanted to select. Click. Alright, and notice that it copied the color right here. So let's have another example. This one on the DC. What if we wanted to select this color? Then again, we will use the eyedropper color and we will click on it. And notice that the color also changed. It copied this exact color. Alright, next is select and move. So let's select the 2016 DC logo and move it to the left side. Okay, this one right here. So this is important. This is useful when we are trying to move objects with the same background color. So we will use the Marquee Tool, this one right here, and then select the area that we want to move, just like that, and then use the Move tool to move it around, just like that. Alright. However, it will leave a mark to it, but we'll get to it in the future. How we're going to fix it. For the meantime, we are able to move an object around. Next is other selections. There are several other ways on how we can select objects on the picture. So we have here Lasso Tool, Polygonal Tool, Magnetic Tool. Each of these tools acts differently in performing selections. So let's take, for example, this one. If we're going to select the Lasso Tool, this one right here, it will allow us to select areas. But using the Lasso Tool, we have to be very careful, and we have to be very careful in selecting the edges, because sometimes it will not be as perfect as we hope it can. It's like that. So we can use it to select, or we can use the polygonal lasso, but the polygonal lasso is not very good for areas that have curves. It is only useful for area or objects that has straight edges, like square, something like that. Okay, so I'm going to send this presentation to you so you can remove it, or you can just review it, and then if you have Adobe Photoshop installed on your computer, you can practice it yourself. Alright, and then retouching. So just like what we did a while ago, retouching, we will use clone spot healing tool, just like what we did with this one right here. We'll use the spot healing tool, this one, and then just select the area that we want to remove the blemish. Okay, this is very useful when it comes to pictures that have minimal obstructions. Let me try to look for another photo that have minimal obstruction in it, and then we will try to remove those. So for example, if you want to move, you have a photo, you want to move the like katong electrical lines. Let's see, let's check na ba ni. Wala. Na ay mga photo niya, ganahan kang na ay mga electrical line and it's very annoying. You can use the spot healing tool to fix it. Let me try to look for any photos. Okay, I'm not sure if I can find any photo shader. For example, we're just going to move this area right here. So we'll use the spot healing tool and then just brush it on the area that we want to move, and then Photoshop will try to remove it for you. Alright, but in some cases it may not work properly. It's because this is an automatic procedure, so obviously in this kind of situation it doesn't really work that good. We will try to decrease this size. We will try. Just carefully paint on the area that we want to remove here. Somehow it manages to remove some of it. Alright, so I guess that will be for today, and please stand by for my assessment activity and assignment to be posted on Google Form. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in our next lesson.